Perfect. So good morning. Thanks for joining us. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge that the land we identify as RTO9 is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat peoples. RTO9 and the Indigenous Tourism Ontario honor and respect the land, the people, and the treaties. We are extremely thankful for the original tour guides of these lands and all that they have shared. All those that reside, work, and play on these lands are treaty people, and we must honor the treaties in a mutually beneficial and equitable manner. With 1 in 5 Indigenous people in Canada living in Ontario, we believe working together in a mutually beneficial manner will help all Ontarians prosper through the joint development of the tourism industry. Ontario is home to one of the largest Indigenous tourism industries in Canada. RTO9 and ITO are pleased to be working side by side together under an MOU to help advance the Indigenous tourism industry in Ontario. As an ally to Indigenous people and a partner of Indigenous Tourism Ontario, RTO9 will commit to improving the socioeconomic conditions of Indigenous people through tourism by creating space for Indigenous people to tell their stories on their terms. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Mark to talk about the TWSP program through TIAO.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meg. So I'm just sharing my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see it. But I just wanted to say a quick good morning and a huge thank you to the RTO9 team and also the ITO team for having me here today. Just some quick background. My name is Mark and I'm the project coordinator for TIAO's Tourism Workforce Sustainability Program. And over my 2 years with TIAO, I've managed projects like a Three Fires Collaborative Quest program, as well as the Discoverability Network. And later on in this presentation, I'll touch on how the Three Fires program is still available to this day. And I've had the privilege of participating in events like Rendezvous Canada, Little NHL, City of Toronto's Newcomer Day, and also moderating a session with Marit Stiles at TIAO's recent Tourism Summit. And during that session, we discussed the current state of the industry and the challenges that we've been facing. So that leads to the discussion of why TIAO created the Tourism Workforce Sustainability Program in the first place. And so I just wanted to go over some recent history regarding our industry and what led up to us creating the program. And we all know that navigating the challenges of hiring and retaining staff in the tourism and hospitality sector has been an ongoing struggle even before the pandemic. And the impact of the pandemic amplified these challenges. And we found that 70% of Ontario tourism organizations are still recovering, which has led to restrictions on wages for job seekers. We then faced a labor crisis where job seekers demanded fair wages and employers who were already weighed down with accumulated debt struggled to hire and recruit. And also back in November, the Ontario Living Wage Network released the new living wage rates for our province. And just like the previous rates, there weren't any regions where the minimum wage was the same as the living wage. In Region 9 or in Southeast Ontario, the living wage is $20.60 an hour, which is about a $4 difference from the minimum wage of $16.55. So due to the rising cost of living, job seekers are also less likely to accept entry-level positions. So these issues are what prompted TIAO into kind of sitting down and discussing how we can support our industry to move past these issues. And this ultimately led to creating the program. So what this program does is it aims to address these challenges and reshape the industry by supporting employers in terms of embracing new recruitment and retention strategies through the living wage. And our goal for the program is to modernize the industry, which is the ultimate goal. But we also want to create career pathways for underrepresented employees and also support employers in building a sustainable workforce. And we also hope down the line to foster inclusivity, representation, and also employee retention, and hopefully make Ontario's tourism businesses more sustainable. But the question is, how do we achieve this? And we've received this question a lot through the program. And just some background about the program, what it is. It's funded by the Skills Development Fund, and it supports employers in retaining and expanding their staff. So it's 4 positions that are filled within a company after April 1st of 2023 until March 31st of this year. And what we're doing is we are providing a living wage top-up for 200 eligible employees who self-identify as belonging to an underrepresented group. So an underrepresented group includes, but it's not limited to, the TWS LGBTQIA plus community, the BIPOC community, Indigenous peoples, justice-involved individuals, new Canadians, persons with disabilities, racialized groups, women, and also youth ages 15 to 29. So in addition to the living wage top-up, we offer mentorship. We also have an extensive employer guide that has a bunch of free resources that you can access. And then we also have free training courses from our friends at OTEC, which I will get to later on. But for now, I'd like to get into a little bit more detail regarding the program and specifically what employers can expect out of the program. But in terms of eligibility, all tourism industry employers are eligible. And employers who register for the program will receive support in the form of an employer guide that I mentioned. And in this employer guide, we've included tools and resources to seek out and hire new employees from diverse parts of the workforce. And once an employer has selected an eligible employee to hire, there are two things that they would have to go through within the program. And the first component is they would have to first register the employee through our registration form. And then after that, they would map out a tourism career path map. And what this does is it highlights the goals that the employee has over a 5-year span. And so the purpose of this is to get employees to hypothetically envision a long-term career in the company and in tourism as a whole, and also discover the possibilities and the opportunities to be able to stay in the industry, whatever their passion is or whatever their aspirations are. And we find that this is very important, especially for organizations within the industry, for employers to basically sit down with their employees and have an honest conversation with them about what they envision within the company, what they envision outside of the company, and what their goals are in the future. So for this template, we're offering a free template that you can use, and it's completely optional, but it's also available if it helps you in the process. And then the second thing that the employer would need to do is to pay the employee, whatever employee they have registered for the program, the Ontario living wage for the region in which the organization is located in. So TIAO will provide the employer with the wage top-up, or we can also call it the reimbursement, up until March 31st. And what we're doing is we're basically paying you the difference between the wage that the position would have been or was historically posted and the Ontario living wage for the region. So I'll give you a quick example. In Brockville, the minimum wage right now is $16.55 an hour, and the living wage is $20.60. So what we do is we reimburse you the difference of $4.05 for every hour the employee had worked. So if an employer is not hiring prior to the deadline of March 31st of this year, they can also register employees that have been working with them since April 1st of 2023. And what we will do is we'll provide a top-up for the retroactive payment that the employer would have been eligible to pay. So if anyone has an employee that is eligible for the program that they had on since April 1st of last year, we'd still be able to provide that reimbursement. There's also additional wage support available through the Three Fires program, and you'll hear me bring up this program a lot throughout the presentation. But this program is also for Indigenous employees, and I will get into more detail at the end. But these are basically the two commitments that are required for the employer. We also offer financial literacy resources to help operators to plan and maintain higher wages for their employees once the wage top-up period ends. And the reason for this is we want to focus on the goal of the program, which is retention and sustainability. And we will be able to support employers to make these changes permanent for hopefully success in the future. So in order to be eligible, moving on from the employer to the employee side, employees must self-identify as belonging to an underrepresented group. So an underrepresented group is defined as groups facing significant barriers to participation, unequal access, opportunities, and also resources. And new tourism employees will be reached with targeted recruitment through programs like the Three Fires Collaborative Quest, the Discoverability Network, and CanWin, and then also through other partnerships and networks that we've developed along with the program. So this outreach will be supported by marketing and awareness campaigns. which aims to attract new audiences to tourism careers. So, for example, this campaign will target youth through digital media, but it will have messaging and digital assets that can be used broadly to reach different demographics. We'll also get to that in a second with some pretty cool designs that we hope you guys will like. But employees will be paid the Ontario living wage for the region. And we know that a living wage can help operators both attract and retain talent. And when employees can afford to live and thrive where they work, we feel like it's a recipe for success. The program will also give employees access to mentorship. So just to get into more detail about that, TIAO is creating a program to promote belonging and help newcomers to tourism navigate their careers for the long term. We hope to envision a mentorship program that I mentioned earlier that can match mentors and mentees along with many different dimensions. So not just job title aspirations, but also lifestyle or identity considerations, depending on what the employee is seeking. We also imagine supporting employees who are navigating the path to Canadian citizenship. Maybe they're a solo parent that has children that has just arrived in Canada. Maybe they're a part of an underrepresented community and they want to be able to share their cultural or traditional knowledge. Whatever the case is, what we do is we aim to connect them with trusted industry peers who can offer support and guidance. So employees who enter through tourism jobs through this program, they will have access to training and development opportunities that they may not have otherwise been able to have access to. And their new employers will be able to support them in mapping out a long-term career path. So what's also included in the program is free training courses provided by OTEC that will be accessible. So I will go through each one to briefly give you an idea of what you can expect with each course. But before I get into that, I'd also like to note that if you are an employer and are already paying the living wage, you are still eligible to register for this program and access the free resources, including these training resources. We always want to be able to support you, and this is our huge thank you for already achieving the goal of this program, which is to get employees up to the living wage. But now to get into the training. So the first one is called Inclusive Service Excellence. And it is an interactive workshop that gives frontline service professionals the tools to make service level inclusion and diversity and customer centricity their superpower. The second one is Creating Services Cultures, which are webinars for staff and managers on emotional intelligence, self-care, and stress management. And then we also have Managing with Sensitivity that provides thorough practical lessons for handling sensitivity issues with care and empathy to create a safe workplace for employees and customers. And it also aims to ensure that each employee that walks into a workspace is in a safe environment where they can be their whole selves, free from discrimination and free from harassment. And then the fourth course, which is expected to launch this year, is Indigenous Cultural Engagement. And it's a 1.5-day workshop that is led by Indigenous facilitators and leaders. And they discuss opportunities for cultural preservation, honoring cultural authenticity, encouraging reconciliation, and also just creating social, economic, environmental, and cultural benefits for communities. So these four courses are available within the program and they can be accessed by connecting with us at TIAO. And the reason why we include them is we believe that they provide the essential knowledge and skills for employers and their staff who want to be able to truly value the work environment that they are creating together. So with regards to the program, and just some background of the statistics of it, we are funding for 200 positions distributed evenly across 4 regions. So this was required to budget and estimate how many positions could be supported overall based on the variances in the minimum wage and the living wage gap across different regions, which we will look at on the next slide. But for now, here you can see the 4 regions along with the locations that they are all in. And although the program is nearing its end, I know March is coming up very, very soon, we still have the capacity to support employers in each region. And there's no limit to how many eligible employees an employer can register. So we find that understanding and implementing the living wage is crucial, and that's a huge part of why we created the program. It represents the hourly wage needed to cover basic expenses and participate in the community. So what we've done is we partner with the Ontario Living Wage Network, who has calculated this number for each region in Ontario, and it's grouped into 10 regions. So if you want, feel free to visit their website. It's ontariolivingwage.ca. But on there, you'll be able to see how they calculated those numbers. And it was based on the average for a two-person income household with two children. There's also a single parent with two children and an adult. So all these factors included, it basically was calculated with food costs, housing, and a bunch of different factors, but it's based on those demographics. So the chart displays the living wage across the different regions, and it emphasizes the gap between the minimum wage and the living wage, as I mentioned. So right now, the minimum wage in Ontario is 16.55. But along with that, almost every region's living wage has gone up as well. But as you can see, once again, not every region is the same as the minimum wage. And the lowest living wage listed here is 18.65 in the Southwest. And in the GTA, it's $25.05 an hour, which is equivalent to about $48,000 annually. But if you were to make a minimum wage, the annual salary would be $31,000. So this is very important because in order for tourism employers to be able to find and retain staff, we want them to be able to pay enough if an employer requires that wage to be able to meet the cost of living. And the employer may lose them if they can only pay below the living wage. And in conversations that I've had just by working on this program with employers that have already been registered, I've found that there are employers who simply cannot pay the living wage because they also have to meet the rising market demand, which is why we would love to be able to support them to be able to pay the living wage and why we are including the wage top. We also thought that we can support the employers who are looking to embrace new ways of recruiting and retaining employees. And so that brought us to connecting with different employers and asking them if this is something that would support their business and what they think would help. John Rennie, who is the culinary director for Odd Duck Wine, which is an Ontario Living Wage certified restaurant located in Kitchener, is a participant of the program. And he spoke in one of TIAO's info sessions early on. And in conversations that I've had with John, he is a true believer in the living wage and what it can translate into in the workspace and how it has bettered his business. So the restaurant runs a no-tip model, which means that they don't accept any tips, but they are paid the living wage of $20.60 an hour. And John mentioned that although he's had to put up the prices on the menu, it's had a positive impact, not just on the financial side, but also on the mental health and the well-being of his employees. And one of his employees mentioned it eliminated the external stressors of living off of a minimum wage where they had to rely on how customers tip them. He also said that it's translated to less turnover and that it's attracted more qualified job seekers to apply, since that sense of security is the priority for most job seekers. So when customers found out about this and that he was a living wage employer and that he was doing something that was sort of out of the box for a restaurant, he mentioned that those customers became loyal and he was able to build a better business case. He did, however, let me know that he is aware that businesses can be wary of paying the living wage because it is a financial commitment, but he has found that the benefit of having a committed and caring work environment has made his business grow more as a whole. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I've brought up the Three Fires Collaborative Quest program quite a bit. And for the past couple of years, we have worked collaboratively with OTEC and ITO to execute the Three Fires Collaborative Quest program. So this program is designed to fill critical gaps within the industry and encourage recovery and growth of the province's tourism workforce. And we were trying to do that by bringing awareness of opportunities to potential Indigenous employees. So how this fits in with the TWSP program is that once an employer has completed the steps that I had highlighted earlier, and they have received the program's living wage top-up for their employees, they are also able to receive the Three Fires subsidy for any employee that they have registered that is Indigenous. So the subsidy that is provided is 30% of an employee's salary or up to a maximum of $5,000. And to be eligible, the employer must be a participant of the TWSP program, and the employee must self-identify as Indigenous and has worked with the company after April 1st of 2023. So this is an additional benefit that we thought we'd love to include because we already have been a part of the program for the past 2 years, but we also wanted to see how we can incorporate that moving on into the future. So that's a way that you can also achieve the benefits of the TWSP program. And now, just going back to the actual program itself, I mentioned earlier that we worked on a marketing campaign to target youth and exemplify the opportunities in choosing a career in tourism. So here are a few graphics that have been developed for this campaign. And we worked with Alphabet Creative to develop a campaign to take the approach of choosing bold designs and wording to show that the industry has a plethora of career opportunities that job seekers are passionate about and job seekers can get into. We've also created a series of videos that'll be promoted on TikTok, which leads back to our landing page, workdoesn't.ca. And the reason behind choosing this statement is that tourism has careers outside of the cookie cutter jobs and stereotypes that we have had as an industry, including entry-level positions that pay minimum wage. And although this campaign is mainly targeted towards the youth, we also wanted to attract a more diverse range of new employees, where ultimately the message is that a career in tourism can be a sustainable career. And this campaign will live beyond the TWSP program, and TIAO aims to use it for future marketing ideas. We are also working on potentially having posters up throughout the province, such as the one you see here on the right side, which is titled Roast the Daily Grind. So if you see it in the wild, please feel free to share it. You can also check out our website where you can watch the TikTok videos and provide feedback on your thoughts on how we can collaborate on getting this wording out there. So that website is workdoesn't.ca if anyone wants to type that in. And then finally, the program is still open for registration, and we'll be providing the top up until March 31st of this year. So just to review, some of the program highlights include the employer guide, which contains free resources on how to better attract applicants, where to hire, such as post-secondary institutions that we've partnered with that include private access to their student job boards, and then also resources like the Discoverability Network for job seekers with disabilities, and the Three Fires Collaborative Press program as an additional financial benefit. So both the TWSP and Three Fires program are completely free to register and to sign up for, and it's really easy. All you have to do is fill out a quick Google form. We also provide the living wage top up to support employers in attracting and retaining job seekers by providing the Ontario living wage. And then we have the mentorship app that will be industry-wide for those looking to receive mentorship for their employees. And then, as I mentioned earlier, OTEC's 4 training courses are accessible once registered for the TWSP program. So I will leave this slide up for anyone interested in learning more or would like to connect with us. You can see our email addresses there at the bottom left. Or you can also scan the QR code, and I can send the link in the chat right after this presentation. And you can connect with myself or Lenny Brem, who is the project manager, after this presentation as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully I provide some valuable insight to you guys. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask away.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm going to leave the chat open if people want to send questions. I did have a question, maybe to get the ball rolling. I know you mentioned eligible employees from April 1st, 2023. Does that mean that if our operators hired a new employee and let's say they didn't pay them the living wage while they worked last year, is it possible for them to back pay those employees to top them up to the living wage that they would have received if they had been a part of this program before?
It is completely possible, yes. So we've had an employer actually that we just paid out. They were a seasonal employer, and they had employees that were registered from, I believe it was from June to September. And we were able to provide them that reimbursement, but all they had to do was provide a retroactive payment to those employees, showing that it topped them up from the historic wage that they were paying that to the living wage in their region.
Perfect. So that's a good alternative for people who are looking maybe in having those seasonal staff come back for this season to say, we're going to be able to top you up and hopefully retain those employees to come back for another year. That is good information to have. I don't see any other comments in the chat, but if anyone's interested in following up on the program or potentially getting registered before March 31st, please feel free to reach out to Mark or Lenny. Both their emails are here. I will follow up with their contact information as well so that you're able to get in contact with them and hopefully get registered. And Mark mentioned potentially, if there's some longevity in this program, maybe it'll be for 2024 that you're able to continue this into. So it's worth looking into. It's worth asking the questions, because if you can't make it work now, there's potential for making it work for this season. I know a lot of businesses are seasonal, and getting those staff back, especially when they maybe go to school in the fall or you shut down in the winter, getting those qualified staff to come back for a season when they're off half the year can sometimes be a struggle. But this might make it much easier to retain those staff and have them come back. So thank you, Mark, so much for coming in and talking about the program. I'm hoping that you'll have a couple of RTO9 operators looking to get registered and get the program going for themselves. And again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to follow up with Mark or Lenny or myself. I'm happy to pass you along to them. And thank you so much for coming today and getting the information. The recording will be made available at the end of today's session. But I'll let everyone get back to their days. Thank you so much again, Mark, for coming on and talking about the program.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for having me here. Hopefully, if anyone is looking to hire, we are potentially working towards extending the program for the next 2 years. But it's been
Fingers
an honor.
crossed.
Yes, fingers
It'd be a great asset.
crossed.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, and everyone have a fantastic day.